Are the efforts of transparency by the pharmaceutical industry sufficient to regain the trust of the world population? The COVID-19 pandemic has taken the world hostage since March 2020. Yet there is hope that this health crisis may be vanquished this year thanks to the approved vaccines by Pfizer, BioNtech and Moderna. While there are ongoing campaigns encouraging vaccination, there are nonetheless doubts about these newly developed vaccines. This reticence compromises the effectiveness of vaccination drives already underway. HEC Paris Professor Vedran Capkun tells us why transparency is critical in this current context. He explains what the outcome of the production of these vaccines represents for the pharmaceutical industry.
Our research suggests that transparency is very important because it allows better allocation of resources across all pharmaceutical firms and research labs, which arguably avoids a waste of resources. So it's important that pharmaceutical companies are very open about their clinical trials, exactly what they're trying to do, but also what they report as clinical trial results, which was the topic of my research. This is important even to disclose when the trials fail, because those results can then help others in their research endeavors. Arguably, in the context of COVID, this would help develop additional treatments and develop better vaccines. What is very important here to understand that once you release clinical trial results, this allows for some sort of a feedback loop, right? Because this allows for other researchers and medical professionals to scrutinize this result and to signal when things go wrong because they see effects of these medications and vaccines on the field. So this feedback is essentially crucial to save lives and improve the quality of care and to avoid scandals that we had in the past, such as Vioxx. But of course, this information needs to be timely, right? So we need to release this information as soon as possible. And essentially, as soon as these trials are finished, the information needs to be available to the public. Developing and marketing COVID vaccines could be beneficial to pharmaceutical firms. It represents an opportunity, but also has a lot of risks. The potential long-term effects could be positive for their financials, but also for their reputation. But of course, they're conditional on pharmaceutical firms playing this right and especially being transparent and being fair in their distribution of vaccines and production and releasing all the necessary information to the public. It is difficult for me to predict whether they will actually achieve this goal and whether they will achieve the fairness and transparency that we would like them to have. This will again depend on the way they communicate. If they are fair but also transparent in development of vaccines, but also sources of funding, cost, distribution and pricing of the vaccines, we could see them regaining public trust. If, however, they have something to hide, and they do hide it, then the backlash could be really significant. One thing to understand here is that there is a significant cost to pharmaceuticals when they release this information. And in the past, they haven't been willing to release the information until they were forced to do so. But in a crisis like this, failure to properly communicate could lead to bad public image and also to regulatory interventions. We see this, for example, with the European Union putting limits on exports of vaccine from the EU following the moves by Pfizer and AstraZeneca to lower shipments to EU countries. We saw that also in the past. Whenever there was a scandal, there were new rules imposed on pharmaceutical companies, especially to increase their transparency and to publish their research online. So following the Vioxx scandal, we had clinical trials, a new website being created where pharmaceutical companies needed to post their research and communicate their clinical trials. So if pharmaceutical companies do not publish their research and if they do not become more transparent, regulators could step in and actually increase the cost of their doing business, and perhaps rightly so. Although some firms communicate better than others during this pandemic, the level of transparency is still relatively low and likely insufficient to generate or increase public trust. In my opinion, this is important not only to increase transparency here, but also to make sources of information more credible. And what really doesn't help is the mistakes such as AstraZeneca miscommunicating about the vaccines or the retractions of journal articles that we have observed recently. This could lead to the whole process losing credibility, not only pharmaceutical industry, but also the whole research community losing credibility in the eyes of the public, and that would be a real shame.